Once upon a time, there lived a young man named Daniel, known for his striking looks and well-built body. His smooth, neatly trimmed black hair and confident stride turned heads wherever he went, drawing the admiration of women throughout the village. Yet, despite their glances and whispered fascination, none dared to claim him as their own due to the job he does. Daniel washed the undergarments of the village women. It was a task he performed with care and love. His hands gentle yet skilled. The women appreciated his work, secretly relishing the attention and the clean results he provided. But despite their gratitude, the idea of having him as a husband brought about a mix of pride and shame. Daniel seemed to be admired but untouchable. When Daniel was a young boy, he lived with his mother in a quiet town called Adorso. He was known for his respectful and gentle nature, always calm and considerate. His mother often thanked God for blessing her with such a son, and she cherished every moment they spent together. When it came time for her to do the laundry, Daniel would be right there by her side, rolling up his sleeves and plunging his small hands into the soapy water. As the years passed, their routine became a tradition. Daniel's mother started handing him their undergarments to wash, trusting him to do it properly. It was during these moments, with the water sloshing and the warm sun on their backs, that they grew even closer. They shared laughter, exchanged stories, and spoke about little things that mattered to them. She would often give him advice, her voice gentle but firm. "Even if your clothes are dirty, never wear a dirty underwear," she would say, her eyes twinkling with affection. Daniel always nodded, taking her words to heart, knowing that this was more than just about laundry, it was a lesson in self-respect. These happy moments between mother and son stretched on for many years. But time has a way of catching up, and as Daniel's mother grew older, her health began to fade. Eventually, she passed away, leaving Daniel with an emptiness that he didn't know how to fill. Her death shattered him. She had been his whole world. For weeks, he barely left their home, unable to face a life without her. The days turned to weeks, and weeks turned into months of grief and isolation. One day, while lost in his thoughts, Daniel found himself remembering those afternoons, washing clothes beside his mother. Her voice echoed in his mind, clear and bright as if she were standing right beside him. "Even if your clothes are dirty, never wear a dirty underwear." The words hit him hard, like a jolt that shook him out of his despair. It was a reminder of her strength, her spirit, and the simple dignity she had always upheld. Determined to honor her memory, Daniel rose from where he had been sitting and gathered all the undergarments he could find in the house, including the ones that belonged to his late mother. He took them to the washing basin and scrubbed them clean, washing them over and over until his hands were red and raw. In that act, he felt a part of her still with him, and for the first time since she passed, he felt a glimmer of peace. As Daniel continued his routine of washing the undergarments, he found a quiet, inner joy that soothed his grief. It was as though, with every rinse and scrub, he was reconnecting with the love and warmth his mother had once given him. The rhythmic motion, the scent of soap, and the gentle splash of water became his way of finding peace in a world that suddenly felt so empty. One day, as he was busy with his usual task, a young woman named Esther happened to pass by. She paused, watching him for a moment, noticing the serene expression on his face. Daniel's hands moved skillfully, almost as if he was performing a ritual, and despite the simplicity of his work, he radiated a sense of calm and contentment. Intrigued, Esther approached him and said with a playful smile, "Daniel, I see how happy you are when you're washing those clothes. Maybe I should bring mine too." Daniel looked up, surprised but pleased, and they shared a warm smile. True to her word, Esther returned the next day with a small bundle of her undergarments. She handed them over without hesitation, and Daniel, with the same quiet grace, took them to the basin and began to wash. Word quickly spread around the village. Soon, other women began to follow Esther's lead. It started with a few, but before long, there was a steady stream of women bringing their undergarments to Daniel. Sometimes, there would even be a queue, with women chatting and waiting patiently for their turn. They knew Daniel would treat their clothes with the same care and attention he had always shown, and for some, it became an opportunity to see the handsome, kind-hearted man they had admired from afar. However, the sight of this new routine didn't sit well with everyone. The men of the village were baffled, even amused, by what they saw. They would gather in groups, pointing and laughing, making jokes at Daniel's expense. "What kind of man washes women's undergarments?" they would scoff. "Look at him, doing a woman's job." Their words were sharp, meant to cut down his dignity, but Daniel didn't let them get to him. He kept his head down, his hands steady, and continued with his work. The women who had once found Daniel so appealing began to see him differently. The allure of his strong build and handsome face faded under the gossip. For them, Daniel's role had changed, and so had their feelings. Some no longer looked at him with desire, but with a mix of pity and confusion. But Daniel didn't mind. This wasn't about pride or appearances for him. Washing the clothes was his way of keeping a piece of his mother alive, and it gave him a sense of purpose that no amount of mockery could take away. One late afternoon, as the sun dipped low over Adorso, casting a warm, golden glow over the village, Daniel returned home after delivering a bundle of freshly washed undergarments. He was tired, his hands slightly pruned from the hours spent at the washbasin, but there was a calm satisfaction in his heart. However, as he approached his home, he noticed a crowd gathered outside his doorway. It wasn't just a few curious onlookers, but a full assembly of people, including village elders, the chief, and many of the men who had once laughed and mocked him. At the front stood Nana Isi, the village queen mother, her regal presence commanding attention. Daniel's heart raced as he stepped closer, unsure of what to expect. The murmuring crowd parted to make way for him, and all eyes turned in his direction. Nana Isi took a step forward, her expression serious but warm, and she began to speak. "Daniel," she said, her voice clear and steady, "for years you have quietly served this village, and you've done it with a kind and gentle heart. In a task that others might see as humble or menial, you found dignity and purpose. You have shown us all that there is no shame in the work you do. Rather, you've taught us that care, service, and dedication to others are strengths, not weaknesses." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, there was silence. Then the chief, a stern man known for his few words and serious demeanor, stepped forward. "Daniel," he said, his voice low but firm, "your dedication has been a lifeline to the women of this village. While others laughed, you remained steadfast. We see that now, and we acknowledge it." With those words, Nana Isi lifted a beautifully woven cloth, rich in color and adorned with intricate patterns that shimmered in the fading light. It was a rare and precious garment, a symbol of honor and respect in Adorso. Alongside the cloth was a bag of money, heavy and full, a gesture of gratitude from the community. She draped the cloth over Daniel's shoulders, her hands gentle and warm. "This is our way of saying thank you," she said. "Thank you for your strength, your kindness, and your humility." Daniel's eyes welled with tears. For years, he had washed in silence, finding peace in the simple act of cleaning and helping others. He had never sought recognition, content with the quiet satisfaction of knowing he was doing something good. But now, standing before the village, he felt seen in a way he never had before. They were no longer looking at him with ridicule, but with respect and admiration. From that day forward, everything changed. The mocking words from the men ceased, replaced by nods of acknowledgment and even friendly smiles. Some of the same men who had once ridiculed him began to approach Daniel, seeking his advice on matters of the heart, relationships, and even household tasks. They realized that his work had taught him patience, understanding, and a sense of care that went beyond washing clothes. The women who felt embarrassed to be with him began throwing advances towards him again. Daniel had become a symbol in Adorso, a quiet hero, a caretaker, and a pillar of the community. No longer was he just Daniel the Panty Man, a title that once carried a sting of mockery. Now, he was Daniel the Caretaker, a name that spoke of humility, and the strength it takes to serve others with love, no matter what the world might say. In the twilight of his life, Daniel often found himself sitting by the same basin where his journey had truly begun. The village had changed over the years, with new houses, new faces, and new voices filling the air, but the memories remained as vivid as ever. He would sit quietly, his hands resting on his knees, and reflect on the path that had brought him here. What had started as a simple, loving act for his late mother had grown into something far greater than he could have ever imagined. Daniel had never planned for his life to take such a turn. When he first began washing clothes, it was out of love, a way to stay close to his mother even after she was gone. But somewhere along the way, that love had extended beyond his small home. It had reached out into the lives of others, becoming a lifeline for the women of Adorso. Through his hands, stained by soap and water, he had offered a kind of care that few understood at first, a silent, steady devotion that asked for nothing in return. He became a keeper of dignity, ensuring that every garment he touched was treated with respect, no matter who it belonged to. To many, it might have seemed like a simple task, but for Daniel, it was an act of preserving the self-esteem of the women who trusted him. With each wash, he wasn't just cleaning clothes, he was easing burdens, offering comfort, and, in his own way, cleansing hearts. He was a man who understood that care was not a weakness but a strength, and he embodied that strength every day. Over time, the story of Daniel spread throughout Adorso, and then beyond its borders. What had once been a source of gossip and laughter became a tale of quiet heroism, passed down from generation to generation. The children would hear it from their elders, about the man who washed women's undergarments not out of obligation, but out of compassion. They learned about how he stood tall even when others tried to belittle him, and how he had turned a simple act into a powerful symbol of humility and service. And then, one year during the village's grand harvest festival, a new chapter began for Daniel. Among the visitors was a beautiful young lady named Francisca. She had come from a neighboring town, drawn by the lively celebrations, the music, and the vibrant colors that lit up the streets. When her eyes first met Daniel's, there was a spark, an unspoken connection that made her heart skip a beat. For Daniel, it was like seeing the world in color for the first time, as if the years of quiet work had led him to this moment. They began to talk, their conversations flowing easily, and for once, Daniel found himself opening up about his life, his joys, and his sorrows. Francisca listened, her eyes soft with understanding, and she saw in him not just a man who washed clothes but a soul full of kindness and strength. What started as simple conversations grew into a deep bond, and before long, the two were inseparable. It was as if fate had brought Francisca to Adorso, to find the man whose story she had heard whispered like a legend. In time, Daniel and Francisca married, and the village rejoiced. It was a rare sight to see the man who had spent so many years giving to others finally receive something beautiful in return. They built a life together, filled with laughter, warmth, and the quiet, steady love that Daniel had always carried in his heart. And so, the story of Daniel continued, but this time with a different kind of joy. He was no longer just the man who washed undergarments, he was a husband, a beloved figure in the community, and a symbol of how love and humility could change lives. He and Francisca lived out their days together, their love growing stronger with each passing year.